good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few moments while everybody files into the webinar, and we'll get started in just a few minutes.
Jason, are we going to have video or not?
If you would like to have video, you can just turn on your video.
It says you cannot start video because the host has stopped it. I don't know if there's something you need to do or if it's on my end.
I'm not showing that I stopped that.
There you go. I don't know. Yeah, it's
everybody wants to see me.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't allow me to open up, but that's fine.
Are you able to see yourself?
No.
Do your video?
Nope.
Oh, someone has their hand raised already. Derek. Yes, Derek.
It's because it's a webinar. You'll not be able to do the video. If it was
okay.
If it was a meeting, then you could do it as video stream.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn myself off.
You don't want to be the only one we look at?
No comment.
All right, thanks, Jason. Thanks, Derek.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm the Affiliate Services Coordinator for WASAC, and I want to welcome you to the COVID-19 check-in for Friday, May 15th. Sorry. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items that most of you should be familiar with. Everyone was muted upon entry into this webinar, so if you would like to raise your hand to ask a question or make a comment, please click on the raise your hand icon. Just a reminder, everybody is muted. If you're following by phone only or a phone line separately, you want to press *9. That allows us to know you want to be unmuted. Otherwise, you can use the question and answer box, or you can also provide comments or questions in the chat box, which we'll be monitoring. And on screen, everybody should see the COVID-19 check-in slide. So if for any reason you're not hearing us or you're not seeing the video, please use the chat box and let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to Jamie to get us started. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Go ahead and move through those slides. Again, please use the chat box or the question and answer. If you would like to make a question or a comment, we'll be monitoring that throughout the webinar. Next slide, Jason. So today we are going to have a county roundtable that'll be led by Eric. And then in the last couple of minutes, we just want to make sure that you guys have some recent updates and reminders. A lot's been happening this past week in terms of guidance and things like that that we want you all to make sure that you've been aware of. So with that, Jason, go ahead and move to the next slide and I will turn it over to Eric. Thanks.
Great. I think I am completely unmuted. This is Eric Johnson with the Association of Counties. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We wanted to give an opportunity for varying members to talk, ask some questions, engage in some dialogue between your fellow commissioners, council members, and staff that might be on the call. We'll take notes if there's any questions we need to follow up on. If you have questions for the WASAC staff, we certainly are available, but this is really hopefully more of an opportunity for a number of you to dialogue amongst yourselves and your peers to answer any questions that you might have of each other. We've had some folks asking for that, so we wanted to facilitate some time for that. We have some specific calls later on associated with the variance process, county budgeting, the things that are going on. So we'll be doing some more specific items on specific content in the next week or two. So we definitely have a lot going on, and as we enter into the new phases, as we see what's happening with the actual coronavirus, as we work through customer service, governmental services reopening. So a lot of things are happening. But at this point, we really wanted to throw it open to really ask a little bit of what from some of our Commissioners Council members, what's going on in their community. I thought I might start. I probably should have given them a heads up. Not always a good idea, but to just put your executive committee on the spot. But maybe I thought we would start with our executive committee members that are on the call. I think there's 3 of them, if I'm skimming correctly, are on the call, just to see what's going on in their counties, and then let's see if they have any questions to start us off. So President Gelder, I know you're on the call. I was just going to see if you wanted to say a few things or kick it off with any questions you have, or tell us what's going on in Kitsap County and some of the challenges you're facing right now. So Commissioner Gelder?
Thank you,
If you want
Eric.
to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Well, I think someone unmuted me. So
Yep, you're ready.
We are kind of just plugging along here. I think every day we have any number of meetings that are related to that. Right now, we have a lot of conversations where I think, we're probably close to getting to a point where we may be at odds with our health district and or some other of the city jurisdictions within the county about moving forward. Hopefully we can avoid that and kind of all get on the same page. But we do have, while we have had 157, 158 positive cases, 2 deaths in the county, when you compare that to our overall population, the rate of positives or the rate of death per 1,000 is pretty low. And so we are, as we continue to partner with all of the jurisdictions, as well as our unified command in our EOC, our healthcare providers, et cetera, and now are expanding with the creation of some COVID-related economic recovery coalitions, et cetera, really trying to be able to move forward and figure out what that path looks like. Our board is actually going to have a conversation Monday afternoon about some type of letter to the governor, specifically calling out or looking at the population threshold for a variance. I know there's any number of other criteria, but that's probably one of the points that we were looking at. We did see the copy of the Spokane Board of Health resolution as well, and then taking that into consideration. But yeah, I think all in all, folks are doing pretty well. We are kind of coming up with a plan as we look at the expenditures of the CARE Act funding that we should receive, how to best utilize that and make sure that we can get the biggest bang for our buck, and making sure that we aren't, that we kind of utilize all the various sources of funding that we do have to their utmost. So there's a lot of spinning plates at the moment, trying to figure out where we can do that, how we can do that most effectively. But it's, I think as the time and the weeks go on, the level of angst or anxiety increases, and we're trying to do the best we can. Probably one of the chief concerns I have is how to effectively communicate to the community as a whole. We've been pushing a lot of information, a lot of data, and information about our activities to date, but it doesn't seem like you can effectively get to everybody, and that's an ongoing challenge. So I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Largent from Whitman County. I'm going to say a few things. Things are going on down your neck of the woods. I know you applied, I think, for a variance, but might have had a, I don't know if Commissioner Largent, if you're unmuted or if you're going to mute yourself for staff. If not, okay, I don't hear you, so let's go on. Go ahead.
Hey, I unmuted myself.
Great.
This is Largent. Am I unmuted now?
You are.
Yes, indeed. We applied for a variance 2 days ago, and today received our variance, in spite of the fact that in the interim between our application and the granting of the variance, which was remarkably fast, we had an additional COVID-19 case. All our cases have recovered except for the one new one, no hospitalization. So we're actually doing very well in Whitman County and are looking forward to the time where the metrics applied as far as the recovery plan are applied more regionally than statewide. And frankly, I think the governor's being a bit responsive by beginning that process by individual counties. And I certainly feel the pain of those counties who don't meet the population threshold.
Great. Anything else you'd like to add? Maybe while we stick with Whitman County, I know Commissioner Swanek is on the line. Commissioner Swanek is on the line. So I don't know if you want to say anything either. You were on the line.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to add anything.
We actually had 2 new cases. We had another one today, but both of them are in the same 20 to 39 age category. And we got a letter confirming the news release that we got the variance. So we're good that way. I give a lot of credit to our public health staff and our hospitals and everybody getting their letters in so we can get the package together and get it done quick. And then I hear businesses just saying thank you. So I'll leave it at that.
Great. Well, thanks. Commissioner Hutzel, I see you're on the line. I don't know if you can unmute yourself. Or someone can unmute him.
Are you there?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Eric. Yeah, kind of follow up. So we got our variance last week. Just working with our EDC and local businesses, still trying to sort out guidance for some of them. If it isn't the restaurants, it's my lady down there that I need to have my hair cut, that I made an appointment last week, that I saw her at the post office again today, and she said she would be ready Monday. And I said, well, I'm more than ready. So we'll be working with her, working a lot with our 2 hospital districts, with looking ahead at possibly some things, depends on what eligible things with the CARES money, working with them now. When the new guidance for graduations came out yesterday morning, and we had a variety, we have 8 small, communities here in Lincoln County. We have the largest graduating class in the history of Davenport High School with 53 kids. So we have a big graduation going on here. So they're trying to figure out exactly what that's going to look like. So they're asking, they read the guidance and then they call and then they go, so can we do this? And I said, well, what's the guidance say? And so anyway, we're working with senior parent mothers mostly, which is fun. But yeah, a lot of that, I think, understanding and explaining guidance, I think, to people, timing, those type of things has been a somewhat of a challenge. Some people, grasp it. Some, don't want to grasp it. So that's part of that, and the probably the last thing is really starting to look at after the governor's proclamation. Well, I don't know if that was proclamation or not, but the hiring freeze and don't buy any equipment and things like that. That what's that look like for us? You know, he did encourage local governments to look at that also, and so I think that's something we all are going to have to face here in probably the not too distant future about those gas tax decline and sales tax revenues. So those are just a few of the things happening in little old Eastern Washington, Lincoln County, with 2 confirmed cases that we haven't seen anybody in Lincoln County now for, I think, 5 weeks. And the 2 people that came to Lincoln County, one came from my friend Derek Young's backyard over there in Pierce County, and then one happened to be out of Spokane County. So we so far have not had any local residents. So we're knocking on wood, keeping our heads down, and just encouraging all the things we're trying to do safe. That'll do it.
Right. Sounds like aerial spraying might actually keep coronavirus away. What do you think?
It might.
Thank you very much, Kush. I will make a plug. We do have scheduled, I think it's for next, not this coming Tuesday, but Tuesday the 26th, I think from 12 to 1:30, a budget workshop, because I think Commissioner Hutzel, you've been around long enough, and there's a number of you on the call that were commissioners and council members during the Great Recession in 2008 and went through the very painful budget processes from 2008, 9, 10, 11-ish that were frankly very difficult and not much fun. And I think you are entering into mid-year budget adjustments as well as, and certainly as this 2021 budget. And so we're going to have a specific workshop on that. We'll talk more about that. But thanks for bringing that up, because I think it is something that the members need to hear from those folks that went through that a dozen years ago, as well as we'll have some budget managers that were here during that process that can give you some of their thoughts on that. So I don't know, Commissioner Hutzel, if you want to say anything more about that.
No, that, like I said, that was when I first became a commissioner, and after the first year and a half, I'm going, oh boy, is this what it's going to be like? So, you know, you kind of see the low, you manage through that, you see the highs, and hopefully that experience back there. And I think maybe for some of the new commissioners that maybe don't have, you know, that history to draw on, either from people in your, you know, other electeds in your courthouse and things like that, to see how some counties, I mean, we got through it. I mean, we made it. It was not pleasant a lot of times, but we'll get it done. This is a good group.
Yeah. Well, I do remember there was a number of one-term commissioners and very good commissioners that decided not to run for re-election because it just wasn't much fun from 2008 to 2012. So, yeah. So stay tuned. We'll do our best to help support you through that. Councilmember Stevens, I see you've joined the line. Kind of our fourth officer of the executive committee. Councilmember Stevens, we're just talking a little bit and have heard from our 3 officers. Other officers about what's going on in your county in relationship to coronavirus, COVID-19. So Councilmember Stevens, if you want to unmute yourself, I think you're still there.
I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Nope, you're ready. Yep.
I'm not sure if this is the best day to ask me these questions, since we had a special Board of Health and Council meeting this morning. But anyway, we've our cases, we've had about 3 weeks. We've had a definite 3 to 4 weeks without a new case. We had 15 cases. We've been trying to get our health officer is dragging his feet, to say the least, on getting our packet together to ask for a waiver to move into phase 2. We have fit most everything. He wants to take and add even some more restrictions to what the governor and the guidance that's already been given by the governor's office. And that's where there was probably the longest discussion this morning. But anyway, we want to move into phase 2. I don't know if everyone knew this, but we've had a lockdown or a ban on lodging unless it's an essential travel, like to work in one of our medical facilities. And that goes through May 31st. However, it was based on the only essential travel part of the governor's orders. And since phase 2 continues that, it looks like we're going to be extending it. I'm really pushing to try to get, if we're going to extend it, then we really need to let our lodgers know so that they can plan accordingly. Other than that, we're getting, trying to do everything we can to make sure we have the right protocols in place for phase 2 in case anything happens. And I will echo Commissioner Hutzel is our businesses are like, please, please, please let us do something, even if it's a soft opening without tourists. And I would echo too, I just wanted to say one thing. It's not about the COVID response, but Eric, is I was elected in 2010, and you're right. There's a lot to be learned from the last recession, and none of it's pleasant. And that's all I have.
Yeah, great. I hate to be a downer about what the looming budget could look like, but it's definitely sobering, and I think the more we talk about it and prepare for it is really good. So we will have some time specifically set aside for that on the 26th. And I saw Council Member Hughes was on the line too. If you want to add anything from San Juan, you can unmute yourself, Council Member Hughes, or recuse, or we can. I think you're unmuted. Maybe not.
They have to unmute themselves.
Okay. I don't know, Councilmember Hughes, maybe you've disappeared. So let's keep going. I see Commissioner Price Johnson and Commissioner St. Clair. I see you on the line. What's going on in Island County? You want to unmute yourselves? That'd be Commissioner Price Johnson, Commissioner St. Clair. I don't see Jill Johnson, don't think. So if the two of you want to talk a little bit about what's going there.
Commissioner Price Johnson, why don't you take the lead on where we at since you drafted the letter?
Sure. Hi, everybody. We are following kind of the Spokane mode. We have had very few cases, less than 5 cases in each of the last 4 weeks. We have 100% capacity in our local hospital. There's nobody hospitalized right now, and not for a while. There's been 100% capacity in our quarantine facilities. At the peak, we have 60 beds available, and we've used 6 at its peak, which was also a number of weeks ago. So we've laid all that out in a letter that we're sending to the governor today, asking for not a variance, because we know we don't meet the criteria for a variance, but a consideration of being able to open a few of our small businesses that would align with the phase 2, particularly those that are in direct competition with the big box stores that are being able to open, and we feel is really an unfair competition. Like a Petco can offer services that would have been available through a sole proprietor grooming shop. And anyway, those kinds of things. Particularly our Blue Fox Drive-In, which is one of 5 across the state, we feel should be treated like a takeout food service, because that's where the interaction is with the public. When you're sitting in your car, it's no different than when you're sitting in your car waiting for food from Burger King. Anyway, so we have we've laid out our case, and particularly we want to make sure that we are in the queue for a June 1st opening because we've been able to really flatten the curve. We are experiencing some visitors, day visitors to our state parks and some of our small towns. So I actually think that by opening, we could avoid some of the problems that we're having at garbage being stacked up and people being frustrated if we were able to open softly, sort of the way that Commissioner Stevens was speaking about it. But I will be bringing this letter to our Board of Health to get us on Tuesday just for information. We haven't pursued that, as I said, because we didn't have the population structure, but I'm concerned by the governor's speech this week that said don't count on phase 2 coming on June 1st. If we're also doing 3,000 randomized tests of asymptomatic folks, kind of a mass testing in this 2-week period. And so far the results have been of the, I think 300 tests that have been done out of the 3,000, they're all negative so far. So that's really encouraging as well. We feel like our staff has done a great job and our community has done a great job in addressing the peak. But our businesses are really struggling. So that's our tack right now. And if we're speaking about budgets, I think that it's wise for all of us to be looking at the ability to shrink by attrition right now, and possibly even making some other cuts before the end of the year, because the last thing you want to do is have to take all those all at once. That would be my advice.
Yeah. So I concur with that. A couple clarifications. I was on the phone with the governor because of the issue of the big box and the pet grooming. The governor did issue a letter to the retail large retailers like Petco and PetSmart that Attorney General sent a letter telling them to shut down their pet grooming, that was not considered an eligible or an essential service, and and sent them a warning letter. They did not, because of the unintended consequences of not having a real level playing field for our small businesses. They also issued a clarification, because we're a community that is highly driven by tourism and particularly our arts community. They gave me or sent us a clarification on art galleries will not be included in museums, which was phase 3. But if they sell art, they're going to be considered retail. So that's good news for our arts community. I'm getting requests from our local chamber around working collaboratively across the whole county to have uniform promotional materials and guidance. So as we do this, as we work towards opening, that we can have the same guidance across the whole county and not have that guidance differ. And then hopefully we can engage our chambers of commerce in participating in promoting safe practices of physical distancing and masks. The other actions that our board took this week with through our prosecutor was to get clarification on government was deemed essential. So we've kept operating much of our work, but just in a different way. We want to reopen our forward-facing counters and begin to engage the public, especially with a public that tends to be older. We're roughly 50 years older than the state population. Many of those folks really need additional assistance to transact business with government. The governor has received that and are looking at that and are not unfavorably disposed to understanding what we're trying to do and both of these options. So that was for the additional updates. We have.
Thank you. You're breaking up Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit for us, so
Okay.
I think we'll keep moving along there. Yeah, thank you. I think we are definitely working on the customer-facing governmental services that were being referred to. We've had numerous conversations with the governor's staff, and we've been talking with county administrators about that as well. I see a couple of county commissioners from Thurston County on the line. Commissioner Hutchings, I see, is on the line. Commissioner Hutchings, if you want to unmute yourself, and I think also Commissioner Menser, you're on the line, and even Robin Campbell, one of your budget directors, on the line. So go ahead.
All right. Am I on now live, eh?
You are live.
All right. I just want to update. The map shows 123 as of the 13th, but we're up to 125 now, still with only one death. Dagnabbit. And going back to Eric's and your Eric and Commissioner Hutzel's comment about new commissioners not having been through the great whatever happened in 08 and 09. I'm gently used. I'm not new, but I'm gently used. Some of our challenges are going to be contract tracers. We only have 3 investigators, and we're going to have to up that if we're going to be opening up business coming up. And we opened up our parks a week ago, along with all the other cities in the county. We're going to be issuing 2 masks each to our employees and have masks available to civilians when we have our grand opening again. We were able to purchase 100 gallons of sanitizer from Clark County. Thank you, Clark County, for that. We don't know yet what kind of issues daycare is going to be for our employees when we start re-engaging, whether they can come back or not, because that's a hot topic is the daycare. And regarding budget reduction talks that we've been having, my ears are bleeding a bit because I'm getting calls from some other elected officials and their points of view, as you can imagine, where the cuts should come from. Our courts are looking at, we're looking at using empty empty big box store buildings for courtrooms, temporary courtrooms, because our courtrooms, of course, were not built for a pandemic when it comes to jury rooms, elevator etiquette, and distancing and such. I talked to 2 grocery stores today in town, and they said their management is talking about possibly mandatory, they have mandatory for employees masking, but maybe gloving as well. And if we ever do move to that, we're going to be in a real hurt trying to find gloves. As we try to sort out our grant monies, we have several hands out from people that say, hey, give us. So there's going to be competing interests there. And there's the yin and yang, of course, of public health versus the economic health. This morning, Shauna Stewart, our VCB director, is looking at laying off a couple of personnel. And it's a small organization, as you can imagine. But she did say there's an uptick in lodging from about, I don't remember what it was, like 23, 24% up to 32% in lodging. And we're hopeful that when there is a special session coming in, that might help a little bit with the lodging. So I was kind of surprised to hear, God, I'm trying to remember, was it Jamie that talked about the ban in lodging in that county? But we are not there yet. And you have several other counties to go, so I'm done. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, great, thanks. Commissioner Menser, I see you're on the line. Is there anything you'd like to add from Thurston?
I'll just add one thing that I haven't heard anyone talk about. I'm the representative for the county on our local transit system, intercity transit. And we had I don't know if this is how unusual, but our system was trying to accommodate the stay-at-home order, understanding how essential how people rely on a public transit. But the bus routes, between the drivers that were vulnerable and the reduced staff and the reduced routes and then there was some bad weather and homeless issues. It was all resulting in the buses being fuller and fuller and less safe. So our system completely shut down to a appointment only system, transitioning kind of like a dial-a-ride system for the whole county. Weeding through essential trips and just picking people up and trying to get them to work and to medical appointments. And now we're trying to fashion how we're going to phase back. And there's a whole bunch of challenges associated with that. So that's been a real interesting piece of the whole stay-at-home order, essential businesses, essential trips, transportation, vulnerable populations, juggling all of those has been really tricky as a result relates to transit. That's all.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And it's interesting. You all serve on differing boards and groups where you're also on the governing board, whether it's area agencies on aging or transit authorities or behavioral health organizations. So, you're dealing with this COVID-19 and organizational operations from a variety of different perspectives, for sure. Yeah, thanks for adding that in. Why don't we go south of you to Commissioner Fund, Edna Fund. You're on the line and you're on live. If you want to unmute yourself, tell us what's going on down in Lewis.
A lot is going on in Lewis, and our residents are just getting pretty restless. And we had a very raucous Board of Health meeting yesterday. And we learned also yesterday, because we're over 75,000 people, we don't qualify for that second round, as we had previously been contacted, say, hey, you get to go in this one. And they're saying, no, you're over that. At this point, we have 34 cases, 19 have recovered, and 3 have passed. Just yesterday, we published for the first time how many cases in each district. Our area has wanted to know, where are these people, and trying to make sure we are compliant with HIPAA, that they can't be traced. So I, quote, am in the winner of District 1. I have the majority of the cases, and of course Centralia is the most populated area in our county. We have businesses that want to reopen. I think all of us have those. We have one restaurateur, her name is Dawn, Dawn's Delectables, and said, I'm not going to the second phase. I am going to add outside seating. I will continue to have takeout, but I'm not going to have inside seating because I will lose money. I will have to hire more staff, and I don't have enough tables to make it worthwhile, and I'm not going to take people's names. So Lewis County folks are pretty independent, and they want things to be opened up now. One of our mayors at a mayor's meeting, public meeting, suggested that, well, why don't all the Southwest Washington counties say we're going live on the so-and-so date, and we open up everybody and see if the governor could close us all down. That was not met with any thought that we should do that, but folks, like I said, I have used the word restless several times, but that's what we're experiencing. I'm hoping this weekend, since the Forest Service has opened up some of their picnic areas, and the county is opening up our picnic areas a week early, so hopefully people can be out there with their distancing and enjoying the area, because I think our folks, I've sit on the ASO, and we're knowing that there's more people very, very disturbed during this time, and we need to help them out. So I probably gave too much of Lewis County, and I usually would say lovely Lewis County, but it's not lovely right now. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Fund. Why don't we head, if anyone does have any questions, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat box, or raise your hand, or unmute yourself and chime in of anyone. Why don't we go up to the Northeast? I think we have commissioners from all 3 of the Tri-County group up north. Commissioner McCart, you want to lead that group off? If you want to unmute yourself and talk to us a little bit about what's going on. And I think we have Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Skoog. I'm trying to think who else I saw on there. No, Commissioner Exner was on there or not, but Commissioner McCart? Commissioner McCart.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is a type of webinar I haven't had to unmute myself on yet, so trying to learn things. So we got opened on Monday. Obviously, like the counties around me were saying earlier, the frustration about not having guidance out in a timely basis has been somewhat of a challenge. I believe we're still waiting on a couple of minor guidance documents that haven't been done. I know real estate's listed in phase 2 and there's no guidance specifically for real estate yet. Lots of questions about, do I fit under professional services? Do I fit under this? Do I fit under that? And not a whole lot of clarity in some cases. We've also had some concerns about liability. I know in my district, got a hold of the Chamber of Commerce, got a hold of me and wanted to know, the restaurants were all wondering if we're having to take names and emails and phone numbers and keep them for 30 days. What do we do to make sure that we are destroying those properly after the 30 days, or we don't end up with a liability issue for having all that personal data? And one of the things I've seen here is, I know our Hub International has put out some things saying, hey, call your insurance agent if you're worried about liability or some of the questions around liability. And that's what we've been telling people, the local businesses. It's probably not a bad idea to check with your insurance company. And we're actually set to do that as a county on Thursday this next week to make sure that we're not, as we look to open up more, that we're not having some vulnerability in our insurance policies. And then the last thing real quick is the CARES funding, you know, how to roll that out. That was a fantastic webinar the other day. Thank you very much, Eric. It was greatly appreciated. I did have a follow-up conversation with Commerce and Senator Short, and I think we've got a way that Commerce bought into to roll money out quickly enough so that we're not trying to bankroll this whole thing when we finally do start getting the money out. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Stug, why don't we go over to Pend Oreille County, if you want to unmute yourself, talk to us about what's going on there, and then we'll go over to Ferry County.
Okay, so I don't know if there's anything too new. You know, we got to open up in the first wave there, the very first, but then we had to wait that week for the guidance, which was very frustrating for people. But now that's out, and I actually don't know how businesses are doing exactly with that. I think they were actually already opening up before that. A little bit of a brouhaha in the news and a party downtown and things like that. They got in the news, but you know, nothing happens then. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's kind of what the whole enforcement thing is. I really shouldn't say this, but it's kind of like the emperor has no clothes. You know, the enforcement is really something that is not there because it's just not really possible to be there. So that's something that I really wish the governor would learn to message a message of hope when it comes to opening up the economic thing, and because that really would be responding to people who are hurting in that way as well. But that's his choice. But I think that is the question, is as this is prolonged, is it will be more and more difficult as people say, well, I'm not really seeing any enforcement. Government's not opening up till phase 3. They're behind Zoom meetings, I guess. And just start to question all that. So I hope that, you know, we're advocating people follow the rules, we help them and all of that. But I think that's going to be some of the problems that we'll probably see going forward as it becomes more and more arduous for people to try to open up and not being allowed to. then I think there'll be difficulty. I know Spokane County, they kind of did what we did in our area, which was send out the message like, here's our plan. And then the governor said, hey, I'm going to send you an idea. Why don't you do a plan? And we said, oh, okay, here's our another plan that meets your guidelines. And Spokane's doing the same thing. And I think that's something that even Lewis County can do. I think with Island, you know, Island County doing something like that is just go ahead and say what works for you, what you're doing, and have that expectation that you can find ways to make it work. So I appreciate that we've been able to work through that. And that's really all I have to say.
Great, thank you. I do want to clarify, we're getting some different reports, except that it does look like the governor is working with the Department of Health to potentially reconsider the requirement to have everyone sign in at diners, but rather make it optional for folks to sign in. So that is not, I know he said that at a news conference, that they would have more information in the next day or so. So stay tuned for that.
I know that my son and his wife went to dinner last night at an unnamed restaurant who had the sign-up sheet available. Let's just put it that way. And so whether they policed that it was being filled out or not is another thing.
Great, thanks. How about Commissioner Davis or Commissioner Exner up in Ferry? Anything you'd like to add from the Northeast? If you could unmute yourself. Yep, go ahead.
All right. Similar to a lot of the other counties, you know, a little bit of frustration, a little bit of disappointment in the rollout of phase 2 and all the guidelines. It'll take the 3 weeks just to get that, let alone go to phase 3. And I guess one of my questions is a more definitive process from phase 2 to phase 3. You know, and instead of just somebody's opinion that it's good enough, it's like, you know, if we get a couple more cases on per capita, you know, is that going to throw us back, or is it going to keep us at phase 2? Or, you know, in relation to the amount of population we have, is that still containable? You know, and I just haven't seen anything to give us clear direction. And so when I'm talking to multiple businesses and different organizations, churches, you know, they're all like gearing up to plan. You know, it's like, okay, so how long do you think it will be? And then I have to respond, well, technically, if we go 3 weeks from the point of phase 2, this is the date. But our experience and all the chaos that we've experienced, that could be 2 more weeks on top of that, or 2 months. It's just hard for everybody to get a grasp of, you know, what the plan is, how long it's going to take, because everybody has a life to live and try to plan for that, you know. And I have multiple churches, it's like, you know, willing to, you know, wait up to a certain point, but you know, when is that? When is it realistic? Even if they follow all these guidelines. And so, I don't know. That's one of the biggest struggles. Obviously, kickback from such stringent guidelines. It's nice to see, you know, on the restaurants being able to have an option, you know, because we're kind of up in the middle of nowhere here in Ferry County, and we're similar to other counties, but even farther out of the way. And people's trust of government, trust of the system, trust of people running the system, you know, can be very skeptical. And so, you know, it's even trust in us as commissioners and showing that we're pushing, we're trying to do the best we can with the available data, with the local organizations. And I think we've done a great job working with our hospital and Tri-County Health to make the point that we're ready to keep moving forward. I would just hate to get to a place where I have to tell people, no, we're down for another month, even though all the data says we're good to go to phase 3. So just clarification Just a lot of our businesses are struggling. And I think the realization that we all should look at is we don't know what this economy is going to do long term. You know, we've seen so much happen in 2 months. It's incredible. You know, whether it's a Great Depression or there's going to be so many effects down the road that we can't even imagine at this point. And our little county that's basically been broke for a long time with no industry, I have to start looking, you know, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, maybe longer, on how we survive. It's not a matter of what facilities we might have to shut down, you know, that we have extra of. It's survival mode. And I know not too long ago we had to borrow money from the governor just to make payroll. And I hate to get back to that place. And so we're doing layoffs right now and just trying to think ahead, try to save money where we can. Because I think just the virus is just the first stage. I think the effects of the economy, you know, it's going to be years down the road. And I think we all need to be thinking that way and preparing. So outside of that,
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot of struggles coming up, I think.
Yeah, Commissioner Exner, you want to add anything from Perry County? If not, why don't we jump over to back to the peninsula. Commissioner Dean, I see you're on the line from Jefferson County. You want to unmute yourself, say a few things, then maybe we'll stick with Grays Harbor and Mason after that. So,
okay, can you hear me all right?
Go ahead. We can, yeah, thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. Hope you're enjoying a beautiful day. You all have not left much to cover. So, I mean, as usual, Jefferson County is a bit of an outlier. We are still dealing with very, very strong sentiment from the public and surprisingly from the business community, saying they are not ready to open. And of course, there are some who want to. So we're dealing with a very, very divided constituency and trying to, you know, kind of come up with the right balance. So where we are in the process, our health officer made some recommendations to the Board of Health yesterday afternoon, which is a partial move to phase 2, but basically not allowing anything that would attract visitors. And that is our number one concern, being as close as we are to the I-5 corridor, that anything attractive is going to attract more visitors. We've already had a lot of people visiting outside of the governor's order to stay home. So that is a challenge. We are looking at adopting all of the phase 2 activities with the exception of no seated service in restaurants, no camping, and no in-store retail. Also, we would be limiting personal services such as salons and barbers to existing customers only. So we're hoping that satisfies the folks who are really afraid of visitors, but also will allow some economic activity to resume. Let's see, what else are we working on? Oh, so by this time next week, we should be through the process. Our hospital has signed off on their components. We seem to meet all of the criteria otherwise, and you know, just aware that whatever decision we make is going to severely upset probably 30% of the population. So looking forward to that. The CARES funding is also not a challenge. I mean, it's nice. It's so unusual to have such unencumbered funds, but as somebody else said, that brings up all the competing interests. And we have a history here, perhaps because we only have one city within our county, we have one port, we have one hospital district. We tend to be very collaborative, and so we are really needing to stand up some sort of effort to help prioritize needs. Of course, lots and lots of need within the county organization. We anticipate, some pretty major hits to our budget, as you all are. Hoping that, because we are the oldest median age in the county, and that applies to our workforce too, hoping that we will see some retirements, hoping that some folks are willing to go to part-time. So starting with voluntary reduction in force. Yeah, I think that about covers it, and ditto pretty much what everybody else said.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that update. How about, let's drop down to Mason and then we'll go up to Grays Harbor. So I know saw Commissioner Trask, I think, at least on the line from Mason. So Commissioner Trask, if you want to unmute yourself. Commissioner Sharon Trask, if you're on the line.
She's been unmuted, but she has to unmute herself, it looks like.
Okay. Commissioner Trask in your lower left, and then we'll go to Randy Ross next. Or Commissioner Ross, if you want to unmute yourself, we'll go to Grays Harbor first.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
All right. Well, we've had some it's been a very interesting week. As you know, we do not yet have our variance request in. We are meeting Monday as the Board of Health, and assuming that the application is ready to go, then we'll immediately recess and move into our commissioner meeting to consider approving that and sending it to the governor and the Department of Health for approval. We also opened up our beach approaches this week. Yeah, we kind of did that in conjunction with Pacific County. My understanding is they opened up also. And then we got word that there could be clam tides between now and month end. And that's the State Department of Fish and Wildlife is working on guidance and how that would work. It hasn't been approved yet, but it looks like it may be approved. And I've been working with our local area director of Fish and Wildlife, and they're working on plans to maybe open up some coastal fishing. But again, they would like to do it in conjunction with other counties and make sure that public health officers are all in sync with what's happening with that. Big budget concerns, we're worried about that. Again, we are looking forward to try to work through some of the CARES Act money. It's been a really interesting process, and again, I'm one of those commissioners that haven't been a commissioner through the 2008 level, so it's going to be a very educational process. And I wish I could say I was looking forward to learning, but it is what it is. So,
but you get to.
Yes, I get to.
Yeah.
Our process, again, I think we mentioned it last week, our emergency management process consisted of also with our incident command team setting up a policy committee, and they've been taking front and center in determining levels of activity and how to address issues as they come up. And sometimes I wouldn't personally recommend. I think when this is all done, we'll look at that process and maybe tweak it some personally. So that's what we have on the coast. We have currently it's sunny for the last hour or so, so we're hoping for more sunshine. We just had a ton of, we did have a ton of visitors last weekend after Mother's Day weekend, and the beach approach access areas that had been closed off, people were removing the barriers, and it was clear that the barrier enforcement and beach driving was not going to be enforced either by our local sheriff or Department of Fish and Wildlife or the parks. So we pretty much were beaten into submission to open the beaches. So, on the health front, I learned that we're going to have another case reported today. And I don't know if this has happened to other counties, but we also had some visitors that came to the county from out of state, and they came in symptomatic. So we're investigating that and seeing what we're going to have to do. The other significant thing that happened this week is that in Westport, the commercial whiting season has opened. And so the local seafood processing plant in Westport, which employs at any one time up to 400 workers, is open. They've sought guidance from the Department of Health. They're working in conjunction with our Department of Health and state and some federal guidance, because they have factory ships out there with 1,000 workers on them that they had to ramp up for PP&E and those type of things. Interestingly enough, they're bringing in, they have part of the federal, I forget what the program name is, but they bring in out of country workers for a period of time. I want to say it's H6 or 8, anyway. They are bringing those in. Those workers have to be self-quarantined for 14 days before they're allowed to work. And then they'll work the season. And then at the end of the season, they'll have to self-quarantine for another 14 days before they go back to their country of origin. So, again, interesting times. I'm hoping that Monday goes well and we'll have some favorable reports to get some of our businesses reopened, but we're a little bit concerned about where the new cases are going to put us in the whole system scheme of things. So that's my report.
Great, thank you. I see where Commissioner Trask indicated that her mic wasn't working, but they are working with the governor and health officer.
It's working now. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I'm not sure if you, we can hear you. I love technology. Commissioner Trask, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Commissioner Trask, go ahead. Well, it doesn't look like she's lost the audio. So why don't you go ahead and mute Commissioner Trask? We'll keep moving on. Councilor Lentz from down in Clark County, is there anything you'd like to add? And we'll maybe go over to Skamania right next to you, Commissioner Lannon. We're getting close to 4:30, but we've got a couple minutes left. Councilor Lentz, you want to unmute yourself?
Eric,
hang on. Councilor Lentz, are you unmuted?
Yes, I believe I am now.
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Great. Yeah, so a lot of the same, so I'll try to keep it brief. I know we're running long. Our cases are, we do have more than show on the map. As of today, we are now up to 401 cases and unfortunately another death today, so we're up to 25 deaths. We are working through budget impacts. Right now, our estimate of impact is $5 million this year to our general fund at the low end, or up to 21 million. And that's a pretty big range, and we're trying to figure out how to grapple with that. We've also been looking at the CARES funding, specifically that Title V funding that we were talking about last week or earlier this week. And our auditor's office has been reviewing it and is trying to, get clarity on the guidelines. And we're talking to all of our departments to make sure that we can get proposals moving. Like many people who were on the call earlier, we are not thrilled about the loss of 2 additional months. So we're hoping that we can continue to address that and not have to use it all up by October 31st. We're hearing from the community, we're pretty divided as well. People are getting restless and are ready to start reopening. We also I represent the district that includes Vancouver, and so I'm more familiar with that than the other smaller cities. But within the city of Vancouver, we're hearing a lot of differing opinions from our business owners, especially the restaurant owners. Folks definitely want to reopen for the economic side of it, but they're hearing from their customers and they're feeling themselves a lot of concern about not necessarily being ready to open, wanting to be sure. I've talked to some specific restaurant owners myself. She's like, I'm ready to go economically, but I want to make sure that my employees and my customers are safe. So at our Board of Health work session this week with our health director, we talked about trying to get some Clark County clarity, like from his perspective and in consultation with other directors from around the state. Talk to us about Clark County specifically, Doc, and if you were to write the guidelines we need to open from a public health perspective, what would that look like for us? Where do we need to be as far as our PPE? Where do we need to be as far as our case counts and how they are going up or down? So that we can start to plan for that. We're not necessarily at a point yet of wanting to try to apply to reopen. We know we don't meet the current qualifications, but given that the governor is expressing the possibility of looking at changing the eligibility to apply for a variance, should that come, we want to be ready to, and we want to be able to talk to our constituents about what being ready to open fully or more fully looks like. So we're starting to get going on that. I think that's, yeah, I can leave it there.
Great, thank you very much. And right next to you is Skamania. Commissioner Landon, you want to say a few things?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I echo, I think, what everybody else has said, is particularly the tourist-focused counties. We're in a position where there's a lot of pent-up need, desire in the urban communities, and they tend to come regardless of what the rules are. Trying to enforce things is next to impossible. So we've embarked on more of a behavioral ask of people trying to be respectful, bring a lot of the materials that we don't have for them, hand sanitizers, masks, water, even TP. And so far, the media has done an excellent job of actually repeating the message. And we've had a number of organizations, the hiking groups, some of the trail people, horse groups ask, what is it they can do? So pushing that message of being prepared. We kind of feel like we're a canary in the mine because we've been given this opportunity and we want to make sure that we don't mess things up. But we have the same consternation between the ones wanting to move forward and those not. And the one thing that I don't think we can control is the folks that are going to come regardless of that. So we've kind of taken an approach of the more that's open, the more dilution we have. We've gone from 2 boat ramps being open to 5. And I don't think that we're going to have 60% more fishermen coming because of that. So that's one of the approaches we've taken. So these sessions are incredibly helpful for us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I hope you all can stick around. There's about 3 or 4 more counties. It looks like 4 that they have commissioners on. I'd love to let them have a chance. If you do need to drop off, we certainly understand that. But when we go up to North Central Washington, Commissioner Branch from Okanagan, Commissioner England from Chelan are on. So if Commissioner Branch, if you want to go first, that would be great. And then Commissioner England, we'll have you follow up.
Good, thanks, Eric. This is Chris Branch. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Well, heck, I'm really ahead of the game then. So, yeah, there has been a lot of folks, commissioners, sharing the same sorts of things that we certainly are experiencing, especially in the west part of our county, which is sometimes I call it the left side of the county, and we have the right side of the county, the Mid-Howe Valley. And that's where a lot of folks have second homes from the west side, and they certainly want to come to those second homes now. And there's also a opening of the North Cross State Highway expected soon. As they're working on it, there's fears and there's some happiness amongst some of the businesses as well. And those are businesses sometimes that are saying, we don't care what the order is, we're opening up. And certainly we're not into the kind of enforcement that goes to them and says we're fining you or anything else. We met this week with the health board. We're all three of the commissioners are part of the health board. And we were looking at some options, and certainly we're looking at the 1.5 rather than phase 2, phase 1.5, and at least arguing for that kind of a situation for us, because we know one thing for sure: the way things have gone, we will not meet the criteria probably ever to have no cases in 3 weeks. We had 4 yesterday. We've had 2 deaths here. But, as you can see, the number there is 31. I think we're at 37 is where we are now with positive cases. And I just have to reiterate that the approach to who gets tested is all over the board. And so we're living by criteria that isn't really that common a criteria. Especially when you look at how the decision is made and how they get tested. So our health officer, Dr. McCarthy, I asked him in our meeting what he needed to feel comfortable in an opening if we were in fact to make the criteria, or if we were to argue that the criteria is actually onerous. And he talked about testing, point of health testing, that ability to do that. When you look at the fact that we've tested maybe 1% or 2% of the population, we look at that and we say, well, that's not very good statistical analysis in the first place. And like I say, it varies all over the state. And I'm looking at some of the counties that actually made the variance criteria, and I'm going, it almost doesn't make sense, but for Ferry County, it certainly does. And the hardships for Ferry County are very difficult because they don't have Walmart and Food Depot or Home Depot and those kind of things. So we recognize that. And so our economy here is it's challenged, and small businesses are the ones that are challenged. The inequity is what's the challenging part. I mean, actually, our taxes are coming in. I'm careful to say that they're not what they should be, but on the other hand, they could be way worse. And so we're not doing that bad in that regard. People here are paying their taxes, even though a lot of them don't want to. That part of it seems to be working out so far, and we can see down the road that there's going to be problems. But to avoid rambling on, I mean, I think we're really hoping that we can take that mold that's being created and break that mold. And we have a lot of businesses that are committed to doing what's right. But what the biggest thing that we're concerned about is the metrics that we use to back out of the situation if it starts getting bad as a result of our moving forward. And that doesn't get talked too much about. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Eric, for listening.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And Commissioner England?
Thank you. I can't really add a whole lot more than what everyone else has said. It sounds like everyone has the same concerns. We did, as you know, sent in, as San Juan mentioned, a letter of consideration. We called it the 1.5. And our main reason of doing that was to try to solve some of the inconsistencies that are making people not want to follow even the rules that make sense when they see all the inadequate rules that some have and the other rules that other people can never achieve. When I can buy socks at Walmart, but I can't go buy socks at my local store. When I can buy furniture at at a place that's a national chain because they have food also, but I can't buy furniture at the local place. People get very upset and concerned about that. I also was able to go, I had to go get a blood test, and to do that, all I needed was a mask and a spit screen between the two of us, and she took my blood and I left and everything was fine. When they see that you can go buy marijuana in broad daylight, but to go get your nails done, you're being told to go park in the adjacent parking lot, go down the dark alley and go in the side door. That doesn't seem to make sense. We're getting a lot of pushback right now from the graduation rules. Our local health district had some which, frankly, as I'm going through them, seem a little bit ridiculous. And then to get the state guidelines that seem a whole lot ridiculous. And our local schools had some very good plans that made people far, far safer than going into Safeway or any of the grocery stores, but they were just categorically denied. The answer that we got back from the state on our request was no within about 15 minutes of the time they went to work. And the rules they gave, the reason they gave is just strictly, we have more than 75,000 people, and we also have more than 0 deaths. And what we're finding is that the trust issue is starting to bleed down to our level now. People are getting irate, even if we support their ideas of opening them, because they're not getting any action. And it's very frustrating. And then when we're told move into phase 2, which they won't even tell us the guidelines for, and when we push them very hard, we find the guidelines that we're asking for are not even going to be allowed till phase 4. And so that's our issues.
Great, thank you. Thanks for sharing. There was a question in the around the is anyone else considering a mask mandate? If you want to go into the chat box and answer Commissioner Dean's question about if anyone is considering a mask mandate, if you could just type that into the chat box, that would be great. We'd keep moving. Why don't we hop over the mountains? Speaking of the Highway 20 cross-state highway opening, I haven't skimmed down, but Commissioner Wiesen, are you still on the line? Commissioner Wiesen, if Ron Wiesen, and if you dropped off or if I have you on the line still. Yep, it looks like you're still there. So Commissioner Wiesen, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead. Looks like you're unmuted on our end anyway. Commissioner Ron Wiesen from Skagit. Commissioner Wiesen. I can hear something.
You talking to me, Eric?
Commissioner Ron Wiesen. Doesn't look like we have Commissioner Wiesen then on the line. So let's, how about we hop back over to Commissioner Marshall from Adams. Are you on the line? Then maybe we'll go down to Gene Strong, Commissioner Strong down in Wahkiakum. Commissioner Marshall, you want to say a few things from Adams County? And then we'll go to Commissioner Strong. Commissioner Wiesen, if you unmute yourself, we'll go back to you.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Marshall.
Did that work?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've been about as up in the air and as busy as everybody else, I think. And we have the same questions that a lot of you do. One of my big question was, everybody remembers the chart, the graph, the Tale of Two Cities, they called it, between Philadelphia and St. Louis, where Philadelphia had the big spike and their medical people couldn't keep up with what they had going on. and there were more deaths. And then St. Louis, on the other hand, ramped up, but then it leveled off. They didn't have the big parade and so on. And so it never extended past what their medical people could handle, and they had fewer deaths. So everybody said, that's what we're trying to achieve. But that's not what the governor asked for. He asked for no new cases and put you in the fear that even if you get to phase 2 or 3, that if you have 10 cases in a day and no cases for 3 months, they're going to pull that back away from you. And it's just too up in the air to know how to figure to. If you had a small business, a small restaurant, we'll say, and you were able to go back to work and you stocked your pantry and called your help back and invested another $2,000-3,000 to get to that point. Maybe you even did a little more than that with your seating and that kind of thing. And then a week later, the governor says, no, you've had 5 new cases, you're going to have to close. You're going to lose again, and this time you're going to lose hope. And I'm just concerned about how that works. We did write a letter to the governor and ask to be considered for a variance, and the governor's office never answered us. We actually found out that our answer was no through the Columbia Basin newspaper. And so we're preparing a different letter with a little more science and a little less heart, and we're going to try it again probably next week. And that's really about all I have to say today. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Commissioner Marshall. Commissioner Strong, down in
Yeah.
Wahkiakum County, go ahead.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I think pretty much, everything's been said. You were actually starting to work with our department heads and other elected officials and planning for when we can reopen the courthouse, having the systems in place and the barriers and stuff so that we can reopen the courthouse. We are reaching out to the business community, working with them, not only the ones that can open, but the ones that maybe could open in phase 3, trying to see how we can help them and get them prepared to be able to open. I know that the 2 port districts have parks. One opened one of their RV parks. The other one is holding off, and I think they're going to hold off till probably after Memorial Day to kind of maybe not have a big influx in there. And that's actually the more popular one, which is Kamakwe Vista, which is, a really nice and got a lot of RV sites in there. They're not going to open their yurts or anything like that. Going to stay with RVs or tent camping. So pretty much we're just trying to plan and look ahead and be proactive on some of this, which I think that's the message all the way through today, was being proactive and having a plan. And hopefully in June we can move a little bit more forward, but we'll just have to wait and see.
And remind me, Commissioner, you did have your variance plans submitted and approved, correct?
Yeah, we submitted on a Friday, had an approval Monday morning. So
that's what I thought.
Yeah, we were kind of surprised, but I think Chris did a really good job with his with the application, because we had 2 new cases, but they had no connection into the county. They from the county, but everything was outside the county, so it didn't affect our variance.
Great. Gosh, I think I've hit most counties, Commissioner. Let me scan real quick. Commissioner Wiesen, are you available to speak yet from Skagit? I'm just skimming the list. So if anyone, if any commissioner wants to unmute themselves, because there are some phone numbers that I can't recognize. So if anyone just wants to unmute themselves and say a few things about what's going on in their county that we haven't heard from yet, and we'll proceed from there and wrap it up. We got just one more slide, a quick update to go through.
Rick Hughes, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say Jamie hit it right on the head. It's been the longest, a very long week. And we did not go forward to phase 2 or make the recommendation because our health officer won't give us the letter. And we have this misguided, weird order that's coming out that I did vote for that Jamie voted against, which I should have followed his lead, that basically says we have a mask requirement that's legally enforceable as of whenever we go into phase 2. So it's just been an interesting week.
And probably more to come. Any other commissioners, council members want to unmute and say a few things? I'm not going to hold this. So Jamie, you want to move us forward in the slide and go ahead and wrap it up for us and take us home.
Sure, although you all should already be home. So some big items that happened this week. There's been a lot in the news and I think some memos that have been sent out around increase of fraudulent claims. We just want to make sure that you are all aware of this. There's a link to a resource from ESD on the slide. Just making sure that you're all aware of that going on. Start phase 2 guidance that has come out. Again, a link to what guidance is already available, and they are working on updating that on an ongoing basis. A lot of you have already touched on a number of those things. Just also wanted to let you know that construction is in process. That guidance is in the works. And like phase 1 construction guidance, WASAC, Paul and Jane are participating in that work group and helping provide input in that work group. And then healthcare services, this includes chiropractor, dental, basically all health and medical care. That guidance is being finalized hopefully today and will be coming out very shortly as well. So some movement. I know it's not as fast as what you are all hoping for, but some movement. And so we'll make sure that we continue to forward when we hear that new guidance is coming out on different business sectors. And then last, a lot of upcoming WASAC calls and meetings. Monday, there's a variance kind of learning collaborative. I call it the Fellowship of the Variance. That meeting is happening Monday afternoon. There is budget meeting to help you all with a lot of the budget challenges that you will be having this next kind of 6 months, and looking ahead and kind of working out using the lessons learned from 2009, 2008. And then the workshop, I forget what that one is, Eric, if you could clarify that.
It is, the budget workshop will be Tuesday the 26th from noon to 1:30.
Perfect. There we go. Budget workshop. So bring your number 2 pencils and your calculators. That is all I have for big items this week. Congrats for those that filed and met the deadline. Congratulations, best of luck. And for those that chose not to file, congratulations and thank you for your service. That's all I had.
And we are great. Thank you very much. I think we are 4:59. Sorry, we ran a little longer than we had hoped. I think some of you are hoping maybe to be running unopposed, and you have 1 minute left before filing closes, I think. I don't know for sure unless you're online filing later. Gosh, I think that is about it. There's some skimming the chat box to see if there's anything else. Have you heard about libraries wanting to do curbside pickup? That's in the chat box from Commissioner Swanek. If anyone has, they want to type that into the chat box, let me know. So anything else for the good of the order? If not, I do really want to thank you all for participating. We do have some upcoming meetings as well. We'll continue to send out our daily information, our daily COVID-19 email. There's a lot of information in those each day. So please keep a look at that. We really appreciate your service, as Jamie indicated. So with that, I hope you all have a great weekend. And if you do need anything, please do not hesitate to give us a call or send us an email. So thank you all very much. Have a good weekend.